When my 3-year-old daughter returned from her grandmother's house with a bruise on her cheek, I thought it was just an accident. But then a secret video exposed a horrifying truth. My mother-in-law was not only manipulating the entire family, but she was also plotting to steal my daughter forever. Will I be able to turn the situation around to protect my daughter? The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the quiet suburban street. In a neighborhood lined with neatly manicured lawns and cozy homes, the world seemed peaceful. Birds chirped lazily, and children's laughter echoed in the distance, while neighbors waved as they passed by. It was the kind of neighborhood where people greeted each other by name, where life seemed calm, predictable, and safe. But within one particular home, behind the white picket fence and flower-filled garden, tension was building, silent but insistent. Hannah sat in the living room of their modest home, the soft hum of the ceiling fan barely cutting through the summer heat. At 32, she was a devoted mother, her entire world revolving around her 3-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily's tiny hands and wide, curious eyes filled Hannah's days with joy, and she had always imagined her life would be one of simple, quiet happiness. Together with her husband, Ethan, they made a small but content family. But lately, something had been gnawing at Hannah's heart, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. It had started subtly small moments of unease when Ethan's mother, Evelyn, was around. As much as Hannah tried to ignore it, there were hints, whispers in her gut that Evelyn wasn't as harmless as she seemed, but it was one particular day that set everything in motion. Hannah had been tidying up in the kitchen when she heard the door creak open. She turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, her face streaked with tears, and a bruise clearly visible on her cheek. It was a small bruise, the shape of fingers, but it was unmistakable. Lily, sweetheart. What happened? Hannah's voice cracked as she rushed to her daughter, kneeling down to her level. Lily didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled, and her eyes darted toward the living room, where Evelyn was sitting, calmly sipping her tea. Evelyn's face was the picture of innocence, but there was something in her cold eyes that sent a shiver down Hannah's spine. She fell. Evelyn said, her voice smooth, almost rehearsed. She tripped on the stairs. Hannah's heart sank. She looked at Lily's bruised face again, then back at Evelyn, who was still staring at her with that same unsettling calmness. There was no sign of genuine concern in Evelyn's eyes. It was as if the explanation was merely a formality, something she was saying because she knew it was expected. But that bruise, it doesn't look like she just tripped. Evelyn, Hannah said, her voice shaky with a mixture of fear and disbelief. How did she get it? Evelyn's smile remained fixed, but her eyes flickered with something cold, something calculating. Kids fall, Hannah. You know how it is. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Hannah didn't believe her. Every instinct in her screamed that something wasn't right. She reached out to hold Lily's hand, and the little girl squeezed back, looking up at her mother with wide, frightened eyes. Lily, did something happen at Grandma's house? Hannah asked gently, trying to keep her voice steady, but the tightness in her chest was unbearable. Lily hesitated before she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Grandma said I was bad. She made me stay in the dark room. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. The words didn't make sense. A dark room. She felt the blood rush to her ears, her mind reeling with the implications of what Lily had just said. Ethan's voice suddenly cut through the tension. He walked into the room, his face lighting up when he saw Lily, but then freezing as he noticed the worried expression on Hannah's face. What's going on? He asked, his voice tinged with concern. Hannah turned to him, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Ethan, look at her face. This bruise, this isn't just a fall. Something's wrong. Ethan glanced at Lily, his face softening, but then his eyes shifted toward Evelyn, who was still sitting across the room, her expression perfectly composed. He sighed and shook his head. Hannah, she's fine. She probably just tripped, like Evelyn said. Don't make it worse than it is. Hannah's chest tightened. She could feel the familiar sting of isolation creeping in. Ethan was always so quick to defend his mother, so loyal to her, even though Evelyn had never truly accepted Hannah. It was as if his mother's word was gospel, and no matter what Hannah saw, Ethan would always side with Evelyn. But Hannah began, her voice trembling. Hannah, it's not like that. Mom's been nothing but good to us. You know she loves Lily. She just gets a little overzealous sometimes. It's not abuse. Hannah could feel her heart sinking. Overzealous. Was that how he saw it? Was he blind to the way Evelyn had treated her, how she undermined her every chance she got, criticizing her mothering in front of friends and neighbors, making snide remarks about Hannah's parenting skills at every turn? Ethan wasn't just defending his mother, he was dismissing Hannah's very real concerns. The hurt that had been simmering for years began to boil over, and suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in. Hannah's mind raced. thoughts swirling around in a chaotic blur. She had always been the loving, patient mother, doing everything for Lily. But in this moment, she felt powerless, like a stranger in her own home. If Ethan wouldn't believe her, if he couldn't see what was happening, then how could she protect Lily? And there it was, the creeping fear that Evelyn wasn't just a meddlesome mother-in-law. She was after something much more sinister. Evelyn wanted to take Lily from her. That was the only explanation that made sense. Hannah stood up, holding Lily close, trying to suppress the panic threatening to rise. She wasn't going to let Evelyn win. Not again. From that moment, everything changed. Hannah had to watch her every step, listen to every word, and protect Lily from the woman who seemed so intent on destroying the life they had built together. And as the storm silently gathered, Hannah knew she was about to face the greatest battle of her life, not just to protect her daughter, but to hold on to her family, to her sanity, and to the love she so desperately needed to preserve. The days following Lily's return from Evelyn's house were heavy, suffocating, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Hannah watched her daughter closely, noticing the subtle shift in her behavior. Where once Lily had been a bright and lively child, full of laughter and curiosity, now she seemed quieter, withdrawn. It wasn't like Lily to keep her thoughts to herself, to turn away from the small joys she once embraced with open arms. At first, Hannah chalked it up to the usual transition after a visit to her mother-in-law's house, assuming the little one might simply be tired. But soon enough, she began to notice a change in Lily's eyes, an unfamiliar wariness that made her mother's heart twist in concern. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Lily climbed onto Hannah's lap, her tiny fingers curling into the fabric of her mother's shirt. There was a tremble in her voice as she whispered, "Mommy, Grandma said I was a bad girl today." Hannah's heart clenched, her fingers tightening around Lily. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm, her mind racing. Lily lowered her gaze, her fingers playing nervously with the hem of her shirt. "I spilled the milk, and Grandma said I was bad. She pinched my cheek. It hurt." Her voice faltered, the words heavy with fear. Hannah's breath hitched in her throat. A small bruise was one thing, but this pinching calling her a bad girl. Her stomach churned. She kissed Lily's forehead, her mind swirling. Evelyn's behavior had always been peculiar, but this felt wrong, so wrong. "I'm so sorry, baby," Hannah whispered, holding her daughter tight. But inside, anger and fear bubbled up in equal measure. She had to find out what was really going on. She couldn't ignore the warning signs any longer. In the days that followed, Hannah's concern deepened. Lily's smile no longer reached her eyes. She seemed frightened, constantly glancing over her shoulder when they talked about Evelyn, as if the mere mention of her grandmother brought back memories too painful for a 3-year-old to bear. Her laughter, once pure and frequent, became a rare sound. Determined to protect her daughter, Hannah did what any mother would do when her instincts screamed that something was wrong. She acted. The thought of confronting Evelyn directly terrified her. Evelyn had an iron grip on Ethan, and she could see how much he deferred to her. If she told Ethan her suspicions, would he even believe her? No, she couldn't risk that. She had to take matters into her own hands. After careful consideration, Hannah devised a plan. She had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She couldn't rely on words alone. She needed proof. So, the next time she sent Lily to Evelyn's house, she did something drastic. Hannah placed a small, hidden camera inside Lily's beloved teddy bear backpack. It was a perfect cover-a-bear that Lily adored and never let go of. It was the kind of stuffed animal that became a silent witness, an innocent bystander to events too difficult to bear. The following afternoon, after making sure Lily was settled and ready for her next visit to Grandma's, Hannah kissed her daughter goodbye, heart heavy with the fear of what might unfold. As the door closed behind her, the air in the house grew thick with anticipation. Hannah sat in the living room, her eyes glued to the small screen of her phone as she watched the video feed, praying to God she wouldn't see anything she couldn't handle. What she saw shattered her. The video began innocently enough, Lily running into the living room, laughing as she greeted Evelyn. But then, as the afternoon wore on, things took a dark turn. Evelyn's voice, once so sweet, became sharp and commanding. She yelled at Lily for accidentally knocking over a plate of cookies. Her words were cruel, harsh, too cruel for a child's ears. "You're so useless. You can't do anything right." Evelyn's voice cracked with fury. "How many times do I have to tell you not to touch things?" Lily, in tears, stood frozen, her face streaked with sadness, her small body trembling with fear. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she whimpered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." Evelyn, unrelenting, grabbed Lily's arm and shoved her into the small, dark room off the kitchen. "Stay there. You're not coming out until you learn some discipline." The camera captured everything: Lily's sobs, the desperate cries for her mother, and the coldness in Evelyn's eyes. Hannah's hands shook as she watched, her eyes clouded with tears. This wasn't discipline. This was abuse, emotional and psychological. And Lily was suffering. Hannah's heart shattered as she heard her daughter's voice pleading, "Grandma, please, I'm sorry. Please, don't leave me here." The pain in Lily's voice was like a knife through Hannah's chest. She had never felt so powerless in her life. Tears spilled from Hannah's eyes as she quickly stopped the video. Her breath came in ragged gasps as her mind raced. She knew she had to confront Evelyn. But how could she? How could she expose the truth to Ethan without tearing their already fragile family apart? But there was no time to waste. Hannah's protective instinct took over. She had to act fast. The next day, as Ethan came home from work, Hannah didn't wait for him to sit down or get comfortable. She took a deep breath and handed him the phone. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was no mistaking the steel behind it. "Ethan, you need to watch this," she said, her hands trembling as she handed him the phone. Ethan's brow furrowed as he glanced at the screen, still blissfully unaware of the video's contents. He pressed play. The silence between them grew heavy as he watched, his face slowly transforming from confusion to shock. The video played out in full, every moment like a dagger to his heart. The look on his face was one of disbelief, then anger, then something more profound, regret. He looked up from the screen, his eyes wide. "No, no, this can't be real." "Hannah," he said, shaking his head. "My mother, she would never, Ethan." "I don't know what else to say," Hannah replied, her voice steady but breaking inside. "This is what's been happening when Lily goes to her house. You have to believe me. She's hurting our daughter." But Ethan wasn't ready to hear it. The guilt and confusion waged a silent battle in his chest. "It's not what it looks like. I can't believe it. My mother, she's just strict. She's trying to teach Lily to be more disciplined." The words stung. Ethan's inability to see the truth, to accept the cruelty of his mother's actions, left Hannah feeling more alone than ever. She could feel the weight of betrayal settle on her shoulders. Ethan's loyalty to Evelyn was too deeply ingrained for him to break free from it. He wasn't ready to see his mother for who she truly was. In that moment, Hannah realized something painful. She was on her own. She couldn't rely on Ethan to protect Lily. It was up to her now. Her determination hardened. She had to fight for her daughter no matter the cost. Hannah was done waiting for the truth to reveal itself slowly. She had seen enough, witnessed enough of the lies and manipulations, and now she was determined to gather as much evidence as possible to expose Evelyn for who she truly was. No longer content with passive suspicion, she became the silent observer, the watchful protector. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. Her maternal instinct burned brighter than ever, and she would do whatever it took to safeguard her daughter. The camera hidden in Lily's stuffed bear had given her one shocking glimpse into Evelyn's cruelty, but Hannah knew that more was needed. She needed to see firsthand how far Evelyn was willing to go, and she couldn't do it alone. So, she continued her secret campaign, setting up another hidden camera in the pocket of Lily's coat. The bear had been a success, but this time, it was more subtle, more natural. A few days later, she sent Lily off again to Evelyn's house, praying that this time she would catch something even worse. The house felt eerily quiet without her daughter there, and with every hour that passed, Hannah's anxiety grew. She checked the camera feed obsessively, waiting for the moment when the video would reveal the full extent of Evelyn's behavior. It wasn't long before Hannah's gut tightened as she watched the screen. The video showed Lily standing in the living room of Evelyn's house, looking tired and uncomfortable. Evelyn and her best friend, Beatrice, were both there, sitting primly on the couch, as they berated Lily in the most unsettling way. "Straighten up," Evelyn snapped, her voice sharp and commanding. "Sit like a lady." Lily, her eyes already clouded with fear, obediently sat up straighter, but the exhaustion in her small frame was apparent. Evelyn continued, her tone condescending. "You need to learn how to behave like a lady. Your mother is too soft on you. You need discipline," Beatrice chimed in. "She's just a little wild, needs to be tamed. I think a little more control will do her good." Hannah's heart pounded as she watched her daughter squirm, her small hands clasped in her lap as she forced herself to sit still, her eyes beginning to well with tears. The camera zoomed in, and it was clear Lily was on the verge of crying, but she held herself together, silently enduring. The situation took a horrifying turn when Evelyn, seeing Lily's discomfort, grabbed a wooden ruler from the table and struck it lightly against Lily's hand. The little girl flinched, her body shuddering as she let out a small gasp. "Stop crying," Evelyn scolded, her voice cold as she stared down at her granddaughter. "You'll learn to behave." Lily's trembling voice barely made it out. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry." Tears welled up in Hannah's eyes as she watched, her hands shaking as she gripped her phone. The video was devastating. The pain in Lily's voice, the helplessness in her tiny body, made every ounce of fear that had been building in Hannah explode into a storm of anger and grief. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The worst was yet to come. Later that day, Hannah watched as Evelyn and Beatrice sat in the kitchen, sipping their tea, their conversation casual and eerily normal. But then, as Hannah listened to their words, her blood ran cold. "You're right, Evelyn," Beatrice said, lowering her voice so it was barely audible. "Lily needs to be replaced. She's just too much. Hannah is unstable. She's always been too emotional. No wonder Lily is so out of control. It's no surprise, really." Evelyn's response sent a chill through Hannah's entire body. "I'm going to take her from Hannah. I'm going to get custody. She's unfit to raise Lily. I'll make sure of it. I'll show everyone what a failure she is. Ethan will see it too. I'll make sure Lily is raised right, away from all this chaos." The words echoed in Hannah's mind. "Take her from me." The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This was what Evelyn had been planning all along. She wasn't just trying to control the situation, she was trying to tear her family apart, to replace her as Lily's mother. The next morning, with her heart racing, Hannah did what she never thought she would do. She snuck into Evelyn's house when she wasn't there. She had to know the full extent of this plot, and the only way to find out was to see it with her own eyes. It didn't take long for her to find what she was looking for. In Evelyn's home office, behind a locked drawer, was a small hidden box. Inside it, Hannah found a collection of disturbing files, a paper trail Evelyn had carefully crafted to manipulate those around her. There were photos of Hannah, many of them taken without her knowledge, some from years ago, when she was clearly tired and stressed. There were also journals filled with twisted versions of events, like the time Hannah had enjoyed a glass of wine after a long day and had been labeled as a drunk, or the time she'd been exhausted from running errands and was accused of neglecting Lily. Even more shocking were the letters of recommendation from neighbors, the church pastor, and Lily's preschool teacher letters that Evelyn had forged, all designed to paint Hannah as unstable and unfit for motherhood. But the most shocking discovery came when Hannah opened a final, sealed envelope. Inside was a retainer agreement with a family lawyer specializing in grandparent custody cases. Evelyn had already taken steps to initiate a legal battle for Lily's custody. It was all laid out, every detail, every manipulation, every lie, meticulously prepared for the moment when Evelyn would strike. Hannah felt the world shift beneath her feet. Her mother-in-law had been planning this for so long, building an empire of lies designed to tear her family apart. She had been playing a game she knew she couldn't win without exposing the truth. As the reality of what Evelyn had been plotting hit her, Hannah's mind raced. She had to act fast. She couldn't let Evelyn get away with this, not after everything that had happened, not after everything she had already endured. Her heart burned with a new kind of resolve. This wasn't just about protecting Lily anymore. It was about taking back control of her life and fighting back against a woman who had stolen far too much already. Hannah wasn't just going to sit back and watch anymore. It was time to fight. The truth about Evelyn was slowly but surely starting to unravel. But the more Hannah discovered, the more horrifying the pieces fell into place. Her quest to protect her daughter had led her to a chilling discovery. Evelyn's past was tainted with abuse, manipulation, and lies that had been hidden for far too long. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that Evelyn's reputation as the caring grandmother, the perfect matriarch, was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. It began with Evelyn's past as a nanny. As Hannah spent more sleepless nights investigating, she came across multiple reports and documents that described a woman who had been fired from several nannying jobs over the years. The reasons for her dismissal were always the same: allegations of child abuse. But Evelyn's connections, her charm, and her long-standing reputation in the community meant these accusations were often swept under the rug. The families who had once trusted her were too intimidated by her calm demeanor to pursue legal action. Hannah couldn't believe what she was reading. How many children had Evelyn hurt over the years? How many lives had she ruined? Each document she uncovered told a different story, a story of a woman who had gotten away with cruelty for far too long. Then, one day, as if the universe itself had guided her to the next piece of the puzzle, Hannah stumbled across a crucial lead, a report detailing an investigation into an incident involving a child who had been left in Evelyn's care. The child, a young boy, had been found with bruises covering his body, his arms, his legs, and his back. Evelyn had claimed the injuries were the result of an accident, but no one had taken the claim seriously. The case had been dropped due to a lack of evidence, but the dark cloud of suspicion lingered over Evelyn's name. Hannah's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the magnitude of what she was up against. But Evelyn's history wasn't just about past mistakes. It was about a pattern of behavior that would not be allowed to continue. Determined to bring everything into the light, Hannah reached out to someone who might have more information. Sophia, Ethan's estranged sister. Sophia had cut off all contact with the family years ago, but after a bit of digging, Hannah was able to track her down. She knew that Sophia's painful memories of growing up in the same house as Evelyn would hold the key to understanding the depth of her mother's manipulation. Sophia lived in a small town a few hours away, And when they met, it was like stepping into a room full of unspoken words. Sophia, a woman in her early 40s, had the same haunted eyes as Ethan, the same wariness in her posture. But unlike Ethan, she had never been able to bury her past. It had followed her like a shadow, and she had carried it with her for years. As they sat down in a quiet cafe, the tension was palpable. Hannah tried to start gently, but the words spilled out in a rush. "Evelyn, she's hurting Lily. She's been manipulating Ethan, and I'm scared for my daughter. I know you've been through so much, but I need your help. I need to know everything about her." Sophia's eyes flickered with something, a deep pain, a buried memory, and for the first time, Hannah saw the true weight of what Sophia had endured. She was always like that. Sophia said quietly, her voice raw, "From the time I was little, she would hit me, call me worthless. She twisted everything I did, every mistake. If I wasn't perfect, if I didn't meet her expectations, I was punished. And it wasn't just physical. It was psychological too. She'd tell me I was unfit, that I'd never be anything, that I was a failure. She told me I'd never be loved." The words hung heavy in the air, and Hannah's throat tightened with grief. Sophia had endured so much, yet she had never had the courage to speak out. She had buried her pain and walked away, trying to build a life far from the chaos Evelyn had left behind. "I'm sorry." "I didn't know," Hannah said softly, her voice full of compassion. "I know it must have been so hard, but you're not alone anymore. I can't do this without you." Sophia wiped her eyes, her expression hardening as she looked at Hannah with new resolve. "I never wanted to go back to that place, but if it means stopping Evelyn from hurting your daughter, I'll face it. I'll help you. We can't let her get away with this anymore." With Sophia's agreement to help, Hannah felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but the truth was starting to come together. They needed to act fast, and they needed Ethan to understand the gravity of what Evelyn had done, not just to Lily, but to him as well. Determined to break the cycle, Hannah arranged a phone call between Sophia and Ethan. She knew it wouldn't be easy for him to hear the truth, but this was the only way to help him see the manipulation he'd been under for his entire life. When Ethan answered the phone, his voice was distant, almost detached. "What is it?" Hannah could feel Sophia's anxiety radiating beside her, but she nodded, signaling for her to speak. "Ethan, it's Sophia," came the tentative voice on the other end. "I know this is hard to hear, but I need you to listen. I've been where you are, believing the lies. But I've seen the truth. I know what Mom did to me, and I know what she's doing to your family now." There was a long silence before Ethan's voice came back, shaky with disbelief. "What are you talking about? Mom would never, Ethan. You don't remember, but I do. I remember every time she tore me down. I remember the bruises. I remember the emotional abuse. She's done the same thing to Lily." "You have to believe me." Sophia's voice cracked. Ethan's breath hitched. "No, I don't know what to think anymore." Sophia continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You need to remember. Ethan, you saw it. You saw her hurt me. But you never understood what was happening. You've been manipulated your whole life." Hannah watched Ethan's face shift from confusion to shock, and then to a dawning horror. His hands trembled as he spoke, his voice breaking. "I remember now. God, I remember. She did this to you, and I never saw it. I never saw it until now." The weight of his words hit hard. For the first time in years, Ethan was beginning to see his mother for what she truly was, a woman who had controlled and manipulated him, who had twisted his memories and actions to fit her agenda. But it wasn't too late. Ethan's eyes locked with Hannah's, and in them, she saw something new, determination, the resolve to protect his daughter. "I'm going to help you, Hannah. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Sophia, seeing the change in her brother's eyes, nodded. "We're in this together now, Hannah, and this time, we'll fight." The courtroom was silent as the tension hung thick in the air, like an oppressive cloud. The day had arrived, the moment Hannah had been fighting for, the moment she could finally expose Evelyn's cruelty and put an end to her reign of manipulation. But as the court session began, the enormity of the battle ahead settled over Hannah's shoulders like a heavy weight. This was no longer just a fight for her daughter's safety. It was a fight for the truth to be heard, for justice to prevail, and for Evelyn to finally face the consequences of her actions. Hannah had been preparing for this day for weeks, working tirelessly with her attorney, Michael Tran, a lawyer who specialized in cases of false abuse allegations. Michael was sharp, experienced, and determined, qualities that had given Hannah the courage to press forward. Together, they had gathered a mountain of evidence videos, testimonies, and records that painted a picture of Evelyn as the manipulative, controlling woman she truly was. Sophia had been an invaluable asset. Her testimony about Evelyn's history of abuse in their childhood had been both heartbreaking and crucial to their case. Sophia had been reluctant to relive her painful memories. But she knew it was the only way to break the cycle of manipulation Evelyn had so carefully constructed. She would not let her mother's actions go unchallenged any longer. The morning of the trial, Hannah sat in the small waiting room outside the courtroom, her nerves frayed. She clutched Lily's drawing in her hand, the one that had been so troubling when Lily had first made it. The image of Grandma the monster, with her sharp claws and twisted, angry face, still haunted Hannah. Lily had been so frightened when she drew it, and it had broken her heart. Hannah couldn't help but wonder how she had ever allowed herself to believe that Evelyn's love for her granddaughter was genuine. Every new piece of evidence they gathered, every new testimony, chipped away at the facade Evelyn had carefully built. How had Evelyn kept up the charade for so long when the trial finally began? Hannah could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Evelyn entered the courtroom with a composed expression, her gaze cold as she took her seat at the defendant's table. She wore a crisp, elegant suit, her silver hair neatly pinned back. On the surface, she looked like the devoted grandmother, the upstanding citizen, but to Hannah, she was nothing but a monster in disguise. Evelyn began the trial by playing the part of the loving, doting grandmother. She spoke with practiced calmness, recounting how she had always been there for Lily, how she had only wanted what was best for her. Her words dripped with falseness, but the judge seemed to buy into her act. At first, the court was sympathetic toward her. Evelyn presented manipulated documents letters from neighbors and family friends crafted to support her story. She painted herself as the innocent victim, the one who had been wronged by a daughter-in-law who was unfit to raise a child. But Hannah wasn't going to let Evelyn get away with it. Michael Tran countered Evelyn's testimony with the video footage they had gathered. As the video played in the courtroom, the entire room fell silent. The video of Evelyn screaming at Lily, calling her useless, and locking her in the dark room sent a shockwave through the court. The raw emotion in Lily's voice, her desperate pleas, resonated with everyone present. Hannah fought back tears as she watched her daughter's suffering unfold in front of the judge. "Look at her," Michael said, pointing at Evelyn, his voice cutting through the silence. "This is not a loving grandmother. This is a woman who has emotionally tortured her granddaughter." Hannah's hands trembled as she glanced at Ethan. His jaw was clenched, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had seen the video, but seeing it played in court, in front of everyone, made the reality of it hit home even harder. It was undeniable. Evelyn had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Sophia took the stand next, and her testimony left the room in stunned silence. She spoke of her own childhood, of the years she had spent under Evelyn's control, and how she had been made to feel worthless. She described the bruises, both physical and emotional, that Evelyn had inflicted on her, painting a chilling picture of the woman who had hidden behind a mask of propriety for years. Sophia's voice cracked as she recounted the years of pain, but she never wavered. "My mother twisted everything about me. She made me feel like I was crazy. She controlled every part of my life, and when I tried to break free, she punished me. She's been doing this to Lily too, and I can't stand by and let her hurt anyone else." Sophia's courage opened Ethan's eyes in ways he hadn't expected. He was listening now, really listening. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. The mother he had idolized, the woman who had manipulated his memories for years, was the same woman who had hurt his sister and was now trying to hurt his daughter. As the trial wore on, a twist of fate revealed the final piece of the puzzle. Jane, a former nanny who had worked for Evelyn years ago, walked into the courtroom as a surprise witness. She had been silent all these years, but when she heard about the case, she could no longer stay quiet. "I worked for Evelyn," Jane said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I saw what she did to a child in her care. It was years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. Evelyn would lash out at the child for the smallest things, and when the parents asked questions, she would always have an excuse." Jane's testimony was a game changer. She described in detail how Evelyn had physically and emotionally abused a child she had been entrusted with. Jane had tried to report it, but she had been silenced by threats and fear. The truth was finally exposed, and Evelyn's perfect image began to crumble. Evelyn, caught in the web of her own lies, finally cracked. Her facade shattered, and in front of everyone, she screamed, "This is all Hannah's fault. She's ruining my family. You have no idea what I've had to do to protect my son and my granddaughter from her." The courtroom was in chaos. The judge, now fully aware of the magnitude of Evelyn's actions, banged the gavel. "Enough. The court will deliberate." When the verdict was finally delivered, the relief that washed over Hannah was overwhelming. The judge ruled in her favor, dismissing Evelyn's custody claims and granting a permanent restraining order against her. Evelyn was barred from any contact with Lily, and the case was handed over to the prosecutor's office for criminal investigation. Evelyn's manipulation and abuse had finally caught up with her. As the weight of the victory settled over her, Hannah felt a profound sense of justice. She had fought for her daughter, and she had won. It wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for every child who had suffered in silence, for every mother who had been silenced by fear. Ethan stood by her side, and for the first time in years, Hannah felt like they were on the same team. He was committed to being the father Lily needed, no longer blinded by his mother's influence. This battle wasn't over, but it was a crucial step toward healing. Hannah had won, and the truth had triumphed. The fallout from the trial was immediate and intense. The truth about Evelyn's abuse, her manipulation, and cruelty was no longer something whispered behind closed doors. It was now public knowledge. Hannah, in a final act of courage, made sure the world saw what Evelyn had done. She shared the harrowing videos of her mother-in-law's treatment of Lily with the media, and the response was swift and unforgiving. Headlines screamed, "The beloved grandmother abuses her granddaughter." The public was outraged, and many other families came forward, recounting similar stories of Evelyn's past behavior, some even revealing incidents that had been buried for years. The damage to Evelyn's reputation was irreparable. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with strict probation terms following her release. Her professional life was over. She was banned from working with children permanently. A devastating blow to someone who had once used her supposed maternal warmth to manipulate and control. Evelyn's departure from town was swift and final, and she was met with the cold shoulder of a community that had finally woken up to her true nature. For Hannah, the relief was palpable, but it didn't come without its own bittersweet sting. The weight of the past months had taken its toll on her family. Ethan, though finally able to see his mother for who she truly was left to pick up the pieces of a broken marriage. Their relationship, already fragile, couldn't withstand the damage caused by years of manipulation and neglect. Despite their shared trauma, the wounds were too deep, and they made the painful decision to divorce. But even as their marriage ended, there was one thing they both agreed upon: they would continue to co-parent Lily together. They were determined to create a safe, loving environment for her, free from the toxicity that had once threatened to tear their family apart. Despite the emotional scars, Ethan and Hannah remained united in their commitment to Lily's well-being. The divorce marked the end of one chapter, but it also signaled the beginning of another. A new, healthier chapter where both Hannah and Ethan could focus on what truly mattered: their daughter's healing. Lily, too, began her own journey of recovery. For months after the trial, she had been in therapy, working through the trauma she had experienced. At first, she was hesitant to speak, clinging to her quiet, fearful nature. But with time, and the gentle support of her therapist, Dr. Laura Bennett, Lily began to open up. She started to share her feelings, her fears, and, most importantly, her dreams. One day, during a session, Lily smiled brightly as she held up a drawing she had made a picture of herself, surrounded by happy faces, with a sun shining above her. The therapist asked, "What's this?" "Lily, it's me," she said, her voice soft but full of hope. "I'm happy now. I can smile." Hannah couldn't hold back the tears when she saw that drawing. It was the first time in so long that she'd seen a glimpse of the child she had known before, bright, innocent, and full of life. Slowly, Lily's confidence began to return. She joined a soccer team and made friends at school. The once shy little girl now ran around the playground with laughter in her voice, her eyes shining with joy. She even began to participate in an art club, where she discovered a passion for painting. Each day, she blossomed more, her fear replaced with hope and curiosity about the world. Sophia, who had once been a silent victim of Evelyn's manipulations, had now become a pillar of support for Lily. She was the aunt who gave her unconditional love, offering comfort and stability that Lily so desperately needed. Sophia took her role seriously, becoming more involved in Lily's life. She often spent weekends with them, taking Lily to museums, watching movies, and having heart-to-heart talks. She was no longer the quiet, withdrawn woman she had once been. She was strong, a fighter, and Lily had become the center of her world. As the weeks passed, Ethan's transformation was just as significant. He, too, was healing. Though the scars of his past would never completely fade, he was becoming the father he had always wanted to be. He and Hannah worked together to ensure that Lily's life was as normal and carefree as possible, despite the trauma they had all been through. But the pain of the past lingered. The divorce was a quiet echo in their lives. But both Ethan and Hannah knew it was the right decision for them. They had learned to love and respect each other again, not as a couple, but as co-parents who shared a deep, mutual respect for the safety and happiness of their daughter. One evening, as the family prepared to move to a new city, a fresh start for them all, Lily, now 8 years old, ran up to her mother and threw her arms around her. They had just finished unpacking the last box in their new apartment, and the room was filled with the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. "Mama," Lily whispered, looking up at her mother with those wide, innocent eyes that still held so much hope. "I know you'll always protect me, no matter what." Hannah's heart swelled with love. She bent down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Always, sweetie, always." That night, as they settled in their new home, Lily's laughter echoed through the halls. The apartment was small, but it was theirs, and it was filled with love. There were no shadows of Evelyn hanging over them here. It was a new chapter for all of them, one where they could heal, rebuild, and move forward. Meanwhile, the aftermath of the case continued to reverberate through society. The media attention on Evelyn's crimes had led to widespread outrage, but it had also sparked important change. New laws were introduced, requiring stricter background checks for anyone working with children, and mandatory training for recognizing psychological abuse. The case became a cornerstone for child protection advocacy, a reminder of the power of speaking out and trusting one's instincts. Hannah's story inspired countless parents to believe in their own intuition, to trust themselves when something didn't feel right. Hannah had not only defeated Evelyn, she had become a symbol of strength, courage, and unconditional love. Her fight for her daughter had brought her peace and a new sense of purpose. As for Lily, she had overcome her trauma, blossoming into a strong, confident young girl who knew her worth. She had learned that, no matter what, she was deserving of love, respect, and safety. And with her mother by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. The road had been long and filled with obstacles, but in the end, truth, love, and resilience had triumphed. It wasn't just a victory for Hannah and Lily, it was a victory for everyone who had been silenced by fear, for those who had been hurt by the ones they loved, and for the power of family to heal even the deepest wounds.